Hey everybody, how are you all doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. And today, as I continue to have tons and tons of E3 topics bouncing around in my head, I wanted to first focus on The Legend of Zelda, which a lot of us think could actually be one of, if not the main focus, at Nintendo's E3 showing this year. Obviously, there are several different reasons why we all expect Nintendo to focus on Zelda at E3, or potentially later in the year. One of them, of course, being the fact that they've already discussed Zelda this year, and have even announced a new release in the Zelda franchise for the Switch to happen this year. So there's a lot of potential movement. We're all waiting for news about Breath of the Wild 2. The return of E3 is a big deal for the industry, and the fact that Nintendo is coming back and playing a part is also a big deal. So, like I said, I've got so much to say, a lot of thoughts. It's potentially very exciting, and so I want to dive in. As always, don't forget that I am always trying to grow the channel here on Rule of Two Review. I upload several videos every single week. I focus on Nintendo, I focus on Metroid, and I discuss all things gaming. And so as you watch the video, if you seem to like what I'm doing and what you hear, then hopefully you will consider subscribing to the channel. So there are three main reasons that I see that explain why Nintendo might really focus on Zelda at E3 this year. In fact, I think it's almost a lock. The first of those reasons is the fact that, well, as we all know, Breath of the Wild 2 is a game. It's already been announced. We've seen a trailer, completely cinematic with no gameplay, but we've seen a trailer, and we know we're still waiting for significant info on that game. Pretty much any info. So obviously, the big bullet point is Breath of the Wild 2, when are we going to learn more? Also, there's the fact that Nintendo earlier this year in February confirmed that The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD is in fact a real game and will be coming to the Switch this year in July, which is only a month after E3 this year, so there's a lot of potential for them to really detail and spend some time on that game. And then, of course, the third thing that we've all discussed numerous times over the course of the past, I want to say 6 to 9 months or so, going back into even last year, and it's the fact that 2021 also represents the 35th anniversary of the Legend of Zelda franchise. Now, this anniversary in and of itself would already be really notable for the year of 2021 and the return of E3 and all of this stuff, but it becomes even more notable when we all realize that Nintendo celebrated the 35th anniversary of Mario just last year. And in fact, not even just last year, it was actually like 6 months ago that they celebrated this and announced a bunch of new games and new products and spin-off toys and all sorts of things, and they had a little 15 or 16 minute sort of Nintendo Direct Mario presentation focused on celebrating Mario's 35th anniversary. And so, you add that to the pile and you realize, how can Nintendo possibly go this year and not also celebrate the 35th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda, their other huge seminal franchise? And with the return of E3, it all makes sense to very likely happen at that show. Now, what's important for us to really remember and take note of on the topic of the 35th anniversary celebration is that while it could and very likely will happen at E3, there is still a huge chance that it happens either before or after E3. In fact, just a week or so ago, one of my more recent videos discussing the concept of Nintendo maybe addressing us before E3, most likely in a Nintendo Direct, I actually also brought up the fact that one of the things they could do instead of a pre-E3 Direct would be an anniversary celebration of The Legend of Zelda, or Metroid, of course, as my Metroid fanship really kind of takes hold there. But, you know, most of us don't expect that to happen yet. However, I do think that a Legend of Zelda anniversary celebration is incredibly likely in 21, and so I think it's very likely also possible either at E3 or before E3. So that's something that doesn't have to be tied to the convention. It could happen sometime in the month of May, but I also think there's a great chance that Nintendo decides to say, hey, E3 is back, we're back at E3, it is the 35th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda, you already know about Skyward Sword, and so now, here's a bunch of other stuff. Here is that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess collection we've all been theorizing about for so long. Here's a re-release of the Ocarina of Time, or a package of other classic NES and Super NES games, or Game Boy games. I mean, the list goes on and on. Obviously, they could do some sort of weird timed game, some sort of online game like Super Mario 35, or some sort of maybe like a Legend of Zelda Maker or a Dungeon Maker, building off of a concept that was first introduced in Link's Awakening Remake. there's a ton of things they could do, not to mention other spin-off products, other books, other toys, a Lego Zelda thing, I mean a Game & Watch Zelda thing. They could do all of these things. I think it's most likely to happen at E3, but again, I'll remind you, there is a chance it could happen before E3. Going back to Skyward Sword HD for a minute, I do want to remind you that I think there is a great chance that we also see a lot of that game at E3. Skyward Sword HD currently exists with quite a bit of controversy around it, which is actually kind of ironic, considering the fact that the original release in 2011, 10 years ago, also had controversy surrounding it, both in terms of the visual style and then, of course, the motion controls. That was a big conversation. I am somebody who absolutely loved the game back in the day. I still love it today. Sure, it's not the best Zelda game, and there are some things about the controls or maybe like the world setup that I don't love, but there are far, far, far more things that I do love about that game. And I am over the moon for the fact that this game is coming in HD, an official HD release, I should say, to the Nintendo Switch. And if you watched my reaction, you know it's also releasing on my birthday, so I am so pumped about that. But there are a couple of main gripes people have already lobbied against Skyward Sword HD, mostly around the price, the fact that it's a full-priced game, and currently with the little bit that we know about the game for the full price, many people are not happy with what they've done to the visuals. They don't think that it's enough of a visual upgrade, and we still don't know if there's any other significant changes or adjustments or improvements they've made to the game, the flow of the game, the pacing, some control elements, if they've added some things, if they've taken some things away. A lot of the things that people complain about maybe want adjusted, like going into that extra zone near the end where you have to go into different dimensions to collect the little tier things or whatever they are. I've played the game so many times and I can't even remember what that's called, so forgive me. But maybe adjusting that like they did with the tiers stuff in Twilight Princess HD. Or maybe changing how often you have to fight the imprisoned, because that's a very regular thing that you have to do in that game. And so, you know, there's just these things that a lot of people want changed, and some people think Nintendo might have changed, but they've yet to tell us. And so at E3, it could be a good opportunity for them to say, hey, here is a great exploration and a great, exhibition of what this game is, so we can show you we made these changes, we made these adjustments and improvements, and if Nintendo showed us that they've done enough, it might justify the price for a lot of people, and so it could kind of make people feel a little bit better about what they're doing with that game. And then, of course, we come back to Breath of the Wild 2. Will we finally, at E3 this year, see and understand more about this game? Personally, I am heavily leaning towards yes. I'm like 80 to 90% that it's going to be the main huge focus of Nintendo's presence at E3 this year. And part of that is because I'm somebody who also believes the game is going to be launching later this year, that it's going to be their big holiday title. We don't know this yet, so, it might be different than that, in which case my theory might be wrong. But A, I'm predicting it's releasing this year, and so henceforth, B, I think that they're going to focus on it at E3 this year. And at this point, we need to understand everything about this game. What is the title of this game? What is the main conceit of the story? What is the gameplay like? Are there changes? Are there additions? Where are we going to be playing? Are we in the same Hyrule map or some different location, or both? What is the release date? Will they actually give us the release date? Are we going to be able to control more than just Link in this game? Lots of theories about being able to play as Zelda. I think there's a bit of a chance. I'm about 30% or so on that being possible. And so these kinds of things we need to know about the game. Go back to 2016 when at that E3, they were mostly focused on the original Breath of the Wild at that time. They revealed the title. They showed 3 days worth of Treehouse gameplay. It was insane. It was awesome. Would they do something similar this year? Again, yeah, I kind of think that we're mostly going to be spending time with Breath of the Wild 2 at E3 this year, and personally, I'm incredibly excited about that. This whole concept comes down to the fact that there's just too much converging this year for them to not spend a lot of time on the Legend of Zelda franchise at E3, or right before or right after E3, like I said. with the Celebration and Breath of the Wild 2 and Skyward Sword all happening this year, it's like, how could they not discuss it? And because of the anniversary celebration aspect, the exciting thing about that is whenever they do it, whether it's at E3 or a different time, there's other unannounced Zelda games that we might even learn about, including potentially brand new games. There's a little bit of a rumor floating around out there about somebody who has hinted on Twitter, who has gotten leaks correct before. Their name is Samus Hunter, and they've dropped the vaguest hint about something Spirit Tracks related because they talk about a train landing at the station or whatever it is. I'll feature that tweet right here for you guys. And, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. It's worth at least knowing that that's out there. I'm not yet ready to put any actual faith or credence into this. But again, because this person has gotten stuff right before, their tweets definitely are worth looking at. Is this train reference specifically about the one Zelda game that was about trains like 10 years ago? I don't know, man. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not really focusing on that. I also didn't really like Spirit Tracks, so I don't know that I really care too much about what's going on there. But it's just a good reminder that Breath of the Wild 2 and Skyward Sword aren't the only potential Zelda things to happen in 2021. And I just think they're not going to go through E3 this year without heavily discussing the Legend of Zelda franchise. So for now, there's not too much to talk about or say until we get closer to the show, and maybe we start to realize a couple of more things that are happening. Nintendo may give us some official announcements or reveals, a direct, an anniversary celebration. There could be more leaks or rumors that come out that are more substantial, discussions about a Switch Pro kind of thing. I mean, between now and E3, there's still time for other stuff to come out that could change the nature of this conversation. But for now, I think most of us are expecting a heavy Zelda presence at E3. It's very exciting. We all want to know about Breath of the Wild 2, and I think this will be the time to learn about it. So for now, these are some of my quick thoughts about what's going on and what we might actually see. I do want to hear what you have to say, your thoughts and opinions about my discussion, as well as your own. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.